All right, folks, so I landed at IAD here in Virginia. Shortly after 2 p.m., my phone was blowing up with folks wanting me to comment on Kanye West's, some described as weird rant in the Oval Office with Jim Brown and Donald Trump. And so I then went to go take a look at what social media was saying, and folks like crazy about all the things that he was saying, calling him crazy, deranged, out of his mind. And so then I began to look at the video, and I saw also what some other commentators were talking about, and I said, you know what? As opposed to falling for that very easy trap, I believe that it requires a proper deconstruction. Donald Trump, of course, touted Kanye West coming to the White House in his Make America Great Again red hat, as well as Jim Brown, because he thinks that he's been doing such amazing things for black people. And so I said, let's do this here. We're going to actually play all of it, but not continuously. So we're going to start, then we're going to stop, then start, then stop. Let's go ahead and start with the portion of it, and then you want to pay attention to what I'm about to break down. Go.
You know, people expect that if you're black, you have to be Democrat. I've had conversations that basically said that welfare is the reason why a lot of black people end up being Democrat. They say, you know, first of all, it's a limit to amount of jobs.
All right, so let's, before you even go any further, so he just said that what he has been told, that welfare is the reason a lot of black people are Democrats. First of all, if anybody understands history, African Americans were largely Republicans after the Emancipation Proclamation. And so you can look at the numbers. When you look at the African Americans who went into Congress, the U.S. House, as well as the U.S. Senate, they were black Republicans. And it didn't change really until Herbert Hoover came with the Lily White movement. Still had significant black support on the Republican side, but black folks were saying they were not strong enough when it came to civil rights. The shift really started with Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Why? Because of New Deal programs, not welfare, New Deal programs that also greatly benefited white folks more than they did African Americans. Republicans still got a significant number of black support in 1952, 1956, even 1960, but yet even in the campaign in 1960 was Jackie Robinson, who said that he was lied to by Richard Nixon when it came to support of African Americans. Remember, it was John F. Kennedy who made the phone call to Coretta Scott King when Dr. King was jailed in Georgia. She did not know about his whereabouts. Jackie Robinson and others wanted Nixon to make the phone call, but he never did. And so even though Kennedy got significant black support, Nixon still picked up a significant portion of black support as well. So Kanye West is dead wrong. He lied. Black folks did not turn Democrat because of welfare. In fact, the most dramatic shift took place in 1964, when it was Senator Barry Goldwater of Arizona who declared his opposition to the 1964 Civil Rights Act. That is when it all changed. Not welfare, Kanye. It was the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So on that point, whoever told you that doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. Press play.
So the fathers lose the jobs and they say, we'll give you more money for having more kids in your home. And then we got rid of the mental health institutes in the 80s and the 90s, and the prison rates just shot up. And now you have shot.
Let's deconstruct that. Now, what Kanye West just said is that he was partially right there. So what happened was, of course, in the 1960s, what people don't want to talk about is that the significant number of unemployed black men in the 1960s. And so you had folks who were in two-parent households. Then he talked about the amount of money that was going to these mothers. First of all, that wasn't somehow just going to black people. What happened was federal regulators, members of Congress, wanted to provide benefits to women, to single women. Now, the problem is the way they wrote it is that if they got married, then the benefits would decrease. What they failed to factor in is you could get married, but what would happen if that man was unemployed? Why did you have significant unemployment rates of black men? Because of systemic racism in America that froze black men and black women out of a significant number of jobs. Now, many people would watch the Diane Carroll show Claudine, where she was, quote, hiding her man from folks when it came to getting benefits. that was the case. But trust me, this was not a federal policy that was targeting black people. It was a federal policy that represented any woman who received any benefits from the federal government. Now, Kanye is correct in terms of the jobs not being available. But the issue there was systemic racism as to why black folks were not getting those level of jobs. Hit play.
Iraq, what people call Chirac, which is actually our murder rate is going down by 20% every year. I just talked to the superintendent, met with Michael Sachs, that's Rom's right-hand man. So I think it's the bravery that helps you beat this game called life. You know, they tried to scare me to not wear this hat, my own friends, but this hat, it gives me power in a way. You know, my dad and my mom separated, so I didn't have a lot of male energy in my home. And also, I'm married to a family that, you know, not a lot of male energy going on. It's beautiful, though. But there's times where, you know, it's something about, you know, I love Hillary, I love everyone, right? But the campaign, I'm with her, just didn't make me feel as a guy that didn't get to see my dad all the time, like a guy that could play catch with his son.
Stop right there.
It was something about when I put this hat on, and maybe...
Stop right there. All right, so here's the deal. He talked about, of course, what drove the prison population was the mental health cuts that took place in the 80s and 90s. You notice Kanye West made no mention of the devastating impact of crack cocaine and how there was a disparity between crack cocaine and powder cocaine. So if you were white, you used powder cocaine, that was a 100-to-1 difference between the ratio of if you use crack cocaine to powder cocaine. That all what drove the criminal justice system. But here's what Kanye West did not say. He talked about the cuts to mental health. Who made those cuts? Ronald Wilson Reagan. Those were the massive cuts that were made between 1980 and 1988. So if you're going to make that particular point, then you must do so. What then happened was the cuts took place on the federal level, which then trickled down to the state level and then down to the county and city levels. And so you had folks who then said, mental illness, we don't care about that. We're going to have drastic cuts. It was Republican Ronald Reagan who drove that. It's very easy to Google. Something else Kanye did not mention. Press play.
Superman. You made a Superman. That's my favorite superhero. And you made a Superman cape for me also as a guy that looks up to you, looks up to Ralph Lauren, looks up to American industry guys. Non-political, no bullshit. Put the beep on it, however you want to do it, 5 seconds delay, and just goes in and gets it done. Right now, you gave me the heart to go to Adidas because at Adidas, when I went in 2015, we were a $14 billion company losing $2 billion a year. Now we have a $38 billion market cap. It's called the Yeezy effect. And I went to Casper. We had a meeting in Chicago. And I said, you have to bring manufacturing onshore, not even shore, into the core. It's not about the borders, the core of Adidas. And Chicago is the core of Middle America. And we have to make Middle America strong. So I had the balls, because I had enough balls to put on this hat. I mean, this Adidas thing made me a billionaire, and I could have lost $200 million walking away from that deal. But even with that, I knew it was more important for me to take the chance of walking away from that deal than to have no fathers in Chicago with no homes. And when we do have prison reformation, because it's habilitation, not rehabilitation, because we didn't have the abilities in the first place. We never had anyone that taught us. We didn't teach us. Exactly, we had no one that taught us, right? So it's more important than any specific deal, anything that we bring jobs into America.
Stop right
and
there.
That we.
Kanye West talked about the value of Adidas. Go to my iPad, please. According to this breakdown here, the brand value of Adidas in 2015 was $6.2 billion, and then it was in 2007 it was $7.9 billion. Not quite sure where he got the $14 billion and $38 billion from. So the second thing is, when you talk about what Kanye West just said, did you just hear him say prison reparations? So is Kanye West saying that he is supportive of the United States providing reparations to African Americans? If so, he might want to further explain that. He talked about the need for jobs as well. Of course, the fundamental problem with violence in Chicago was not the issue of guns, it's actually jobs and education, which actually has been a problem for the last 70 to 80 years because that's all as a result of Jim Crow. Chicago is called one of the most segregated cities in the United States. Folks might not want to talk about 1983 when Congressman Harold Washington was running for mayor, and when Walter Mondale came to Chicago to campaign with him on the north side, they bombed his car with eggs, attacking Harold Washington and Walter Mondale because white folks in Chicago did not want to see a black man to become mayor of the city. Why? Because he would be in control of those resources. You don't want to talk about the political folks on the city council, Ed Verdoliak and others, who said we are going to stop Harold Washington from doing anything while he is mayor of Chicago. See, those are things that Kanye West somehow does not want to mention. And so when you talk about bringing jobs back to Chicago, well, then I'm trying to understand, Kanye, then what is the person across from you doing about that? Because Donald Trump has never presented a plan for Chicago. Just so y'all know, I've been at 2 of the 3 meetings he's had with television anchors. There's only one person who was in that room who has ever asked Donald Trump about Chicago and his plan for Chicago. And you're looking at him. And do you know what he said? My plan is strength. That was the word that he used. Now, it was an off-the-record meeting, so I decided to go ahead and tell you exactly what took place. Because, see, what I can't stand is to continue lying about let's do something about Chicago when you were asked directly by me, what is your plan for Chicago? And the answer was strength. That was the answer. Now, maybe he's thinking Kanye gets power from wearing that red hat. Somehow that's his cape. But the reality is, strength is a word. It's not a plan. Press play.
Provide a transition with mental health and the American education curriculum that Jim has worked on. Larry Hoover also has a curriculum that he's worked on. We have Montessori curriculums that we worked on. WeWorks has a beautiful curriculum. The Waldorf establishment has a curriculum. We have meditation. There's a lot of things affecting our mental health that makes us do crazy things that puts us back into that trap door called the 13th Amendment. I did say abolish with the hat on, because why would you keep something around that's a trap door? If you build in a floor, the Constitution is the base of our industry, right? Of our country, of our company. Would you build a trap door that if you mess up and you accidentally something happens, you fall and you end up next to the Unabomber?
Come back to me. Okay, here's a piece from February 2018 from the Mental Health America, how Trump's budget will affect people with mental health conditions. What it says in Donald Trump's budget in fiscal year 2019, the budget request was $68.4 billion from the Department of Health and Human Services, which is a $17.9 billion or 21% decrease from the 2017 levels. That means that Kanye West is talking about and ranting about the importance of mental health, yet the person sitting across from him who is smiling at him and happy with him wearing a Make America Great Again hat proposed to cut mental health budget by 17.9 billion or 21%. Press play.
Got to remove all that trapdoor out of the relationship. The 4 gentlemen that wrote the 13th Amendment, and I think the way the universe works, it's perfect. We don't have 13 floors, do we? You know, so the four gentlemen that wrote the 13th Amendment didn't look like the people they were amending. Also, at that point, it was illegal for blacks to read or African Americans to read. And so that meant if you actually read the amendment, you get locked up and turned to a slave. Again, so what I think is we don't need sentences, we need pardons. We need to talk to people. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I was connected with a neuropsychologist that works with the athletes in the NBA and the NFL. And he looked at my brain. It's equal on 3 parts. I'm going to go ahead, drop some bombs for you. 98 percentile IQ test. I had a 75 percentile of all human beings, but it was counting 8 numbers backwards after it was repeating. So I'm going to work on that one. The other one's 98% Tesla, Freud. You know, so he said that I actually wasn't bipolar I had sleep deprivation, which could cause dementia 10 to 20 years from now, where I wouldn't even remember my son's name. So all this power that I got, and I'm taking my son to the Sox game and all that, I wouldn't be able to remember his name from a misdiagnosis. And what we need is, we can empower the pharmaceuticals and make more money. That's one thing. I've never stepped into a situation where I didn't make people more money. So we can empower pharmaceuticals, we can empower our industries, we can empower our factories, we can bring not only Adidas on shore, we can bring Foxconn to set up a factory in, I think, Minnesota, 53,000.
Wisconsin.
Yeah, Wisconsin. They have 4,000 jobs, people making $53,000 a year. And one of the things we got to set is Ford to have the highest design, the dopest cars, the most amazing. I don't really say dope, I don't say negative words and try to flip them. We just say positive, lovely, divine, universal words. So the flyest, freshest, most amazing car. And what we want to start with is, I brought a gift with me right here.
Okay, y'all can, first of all, y'all can advance it past the I-plane, because I want to pick it up from there. So let me do a couple of things. He talked about the 13th Amendment, which was ratified in 1865. First of all, we do know, of course, the 245 years of slavery, it was illegal for black folks to know how to read. The 13th Amendment was one of the Reconstruction Amendments. It was the first Reconstruction Amendments. There were three, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. And what he's talking about is that slavery is in the Constitution because it is allowed in the prison system. Kanye then says, well, we need to have pardons. If the person who is sitting across from the table actually has not done a significant number of pardons. He criticized the pardons of President Barack Obama of folks who were nonviolent offenders. And so you can rant on and on about the importance of pardons when the person across from you is the one who isn't actually giving those pardons. Then he brings up Larry Hoover, somebody who is serving 6 life sentences for being a murderous gang member in Chicago. His lawyer is in there. You're going to hear in a second when the lawyer said, well, yeah, I mean, he's accused of doing this behind the bars, but even if he did, he should be out. You might want to ask the folks in Chicago about that. But here's the other deal. You heard Kanye talk about, oh my God, Ford needs to have the dopest designs. Henry, go to my iPad, please. Folks, because of the Donald Trump tariffs, Ford prepared to mass layoffs after losing $1 billion to Donald Trump's trade tariffs. A little hard, Kanye, for Ford to do what you say they should be doing when Donald Trump's tariffs have cost them $1 billion. See, this is what happens when you go into the Oval Office and you just start talking and then you just start pulling stuff out your ass and you don't actually have facts or details to back it up. Press play.
Take everything in China and not in America, then we're cheating on our country. And we're putting people in positions to have to do illegal things to end up in the cheapest factory ever, the prison system.
I'll tell you what, that was pretty impressive. You know, I hate to say this, Jim. Do you want to say something? What do you do after that?
Like me answer one word?
Please.
If he doesn't look good, we don't look good.
Yeah. Great, right?
That's right.
Isn't that a great statement?
Yes, it is.
It's so true.
Makes a lot of sense.
Come back to me.
Yeah, that's a country.
He talked about, of course, China. He talked about, of course, bringing jobs back to America. This is who is sitting in the Oval Office wearing a Make America Great Again hat. Henry, go to my iPad. Some MAGA hats made in China may increase in price because of tariffs. I wonder if Kanye West actually looked at the tag on his hat to see if the hat was made in the United States or made in China. How stupid can you be to complain about jobs should be coming back from China to America, and how proud you are wearing, making it feel like you are Superman, putting on a Make America Great Again hat, fool, when a lot of the hats are made in China. Press play.
I've never seen Jim Brown impressed before. He was impressed. That's true. That statement is amazing, huh?
Yeah.
I want to tell you, it's great to have you guys with us. And we're going to go in, we're going to have some lunch. That was quite something. That was quite something.
That was from the soul.
Yeah,
Can I just ask a quick question?
really very interesting. Yes, yeah, please.
So you had said of President Bush that he doesn't care about black people, and you've heard some people say that about this president. How do you respond to that? What do you make of that?
I think we need to care about all people. And I believe that when I went on to NBC, I was very emotional, and I was programmed to think from a victimized mentality, a welfare mentality. I think that with blacks and African Americans, we really get caught up in the idea of racism over the idea of industry. We say if people don't have land, they settle for brands. We want Polo Sport and Obama again. We want a brand more than we want land because we haven't known how it feels to actually have our own land and have ownership of our own blocks.
Stop,
so when you
please.
don't have ownership,
We don't know what it feels like to have ownership of our own blocks. Kanye, you might want to go look up Rosewood to see what black people own. You might want to go look up, of course, Wall Street near Tulsa to understand that. You might want to go look at those black towns that black people created in North Carolina and Virginia. The reality, Kanye, is after slavery, after the Civil War, black folks who were not given land, who were not given money, who were not given horses, who were not given anything, actually put their meager resources together to actually create their own communities, buy their own land, open their own stores. That is what happened. But what you need to quite understand, Kanye, is because of systemic racism and white supremacy in this country, black land was stolen from African Americans. In fact, you had individuals when black folks dared to even speak out about voting. Then they said, we're not going to extend you any credit when it came to the store in town. So therefore, they couldn't even buy any goods to actually farm their own land, which forced them out to give up their land. There were black people who were forced out of Mississippi, of Alabama, of Georgia, of Tennessee, of Arkansas due to racism, and they literally packed their families up from those places and left the land because white folks said, how dare you stand up for your rights? And so please don't sit in the Oval Office and dare say, Kanye, that black people have never actually owned anything when we have undeniable facts of black people owning land, owning stores, owning those things. In fact, when you also begin to look at the details in terms of what we've done those things, but you somehow keep saying that racism is a figment of our imagination, and we just keep focusing on that whole thing and how you have been able to do these amazing things. You could not do a damn thing if Harry Belafonte didn't do it, if Paul Robeson didn't do it, if Sidney Poitier didn't do it, if Berry Gordy didn't do it. Those were the people who took the daggers of Jim Crow, who took the indignity of not being able to walk through the front door and have to walk through the back door to allow you to be able to do what you do in music. Don't you dare act as if what they endured, somehow they were weak and somehow you are so much stronger when they paved the way for you to be able to do what you did. Press play.
Then it's all about how something looks. It's about the patina. It's not about the soil. It's not about the core. So we focus more on, is somebody wearing something? Did someone disrespect me? So I gotta shoot them? Or the idea of someone being racist. You know, we talk about police murders, which we definitely have to discuss, and we have to bring nobility to the police officers and make them, because police officers are just like us. But there's this whole hate building, right? And that's a major thing about racial tension. And we also, as black people, we have to take a responsibility for what we're doing. We kill each other more than police officers. And that's not saying that the police officer is not an issue, because they are in a position of power. But sometimes they're in placement of law enforcement. They need to be law power. It's force versus power. When you shouldn't have to force people to do that. So a lot of times the police officer is sitting there, they're being forced to do this and forced to do that block, and then they force somebody into something and force something. We have to release the love throughout the entire country and give opportunities. A lot of times it's just the overall lack of reparations that we, at any given point, we say, oh, this is racist, this is racist, this is racist, this is racist. So we don't have the reparations, but we have the 13th Amendment. We got to open up the whole conversation. So, and that's a move. One of the moves.
Again, I'm just trying to understand here. So you talked about opening up the love with police departments. Is this not the same city where he's from, where you just saw Jason Van Dyke, who was convicted of second-degree murder in the case of Laquan McDonald for shooting him, lying by saying Laquan McDonald was charging him? Is this the same city where you have a black cop right now who is on trial for being an absolute thug for shaking folks down? Is this the same city in the Laquan McDonald case where several cops erased the video at the Burger King and lied in their testimony, lied in the report? Is this the same city of Chicago where a judge said there were 8 cops who lied on the witness stand? They were flat out lying, and he busted them and reported them, yet the Civilian Oversight Board did not move on those cops. Are you also talking about the same Donald Trump sitting across from you who just stood before police and said that he supported stop and frisk, even though it is a racist policy? We should talk about racism, Kanye, but Donald Trump actually said supporting racist policy. And not only that, is this the same person you're sitting across from who Jeff Sessions is Attorney General, who is opposing the consent decree in your city of Chicago, which is designed to force these cops not to use of force, yet you are talking about the whole issue of enforcement and power? Sounds to me like they have all of the power in Chicago, Kanye. The person you're sitting across from is actually advocating and pushing policies that are completely 180 degrees different than what you're saying in your rant. Press play.
What I love that liberals tried to do, the liberal would try to control a black person through the concept of racism because they know that we are very proud, emotional people. So when I said I like Trump to like someone that's liberal, they'll say, oh, but he's racist. You think racism can control me? Oh, that don't stop me. That's an invisible wall.
But you don't think you reject those who say he's racist?
You have one question, we're going to go to another question.
Okay.
I answered your question. I don't answer questions in simple sound bites. You are tasting a fine wine. It has multiple notes to it. You better play 4D chess with me like it's Minority Report. Because it ain't that simple. It's complex.
Mr. President.
Actually, Kanye, it is real simple. Just like you. Real simple. Press play.
I'm from the Chicago Sun-Times, so I would like to know what you would like to ask President Trump to do for Chicago. You're here to talk about crime in Chicago.
The thing that the head of the police and Mike Sachs met with me last night at the Soho House about was we feel that stop and frisk does not help the relationships in the city. And everyone that knew I was coming here said, ask about stop and frisk. That's the number one thing that we're having this conversation about. Another thing is opening up industries, and we've got to get some tax breaks because we're making we got a speed factory in Atlanta, but the shoes are costing us $300, so it's costing us too much to make things. So we need some prototypes here so we can get people back working. So China can't just beat us, and Vietnam can't beat us. You got Levi's, the greatest jeans company in the world, making their jeans in Vietnam. So we're going to need to get a few breaks to be able to have some places in my hometown of Chicago and the 2.7 million to the 9 million surrounding suburbs where we can create some factories. Now, I think it would be cool for them to be Trump factories because he's a master of industry. He's a builder. And I think it would be cool to have Yeezy ideation centers, which would be a mix of education that empowers people and gives them modern information. Like sometimes people say, this kid has ADD, this kid has ADD. He don't have ADD, school is boring. It was boring, it's not as exciting as this. We have to make it more exciting, we have to mix curriculums. You play basketball while you're doing math. You learn about music while you meditate in the morning. We have to instate mental health and art programs back into the city. So those are, and also Larry Hoover is an example of a man that was turning his life around. And as soon as he tried to turn his life around, they hit him with 6 life sentences. So I believe you say don't tear down the statues. Larry Hoover is a living statue. He's a beacon for us that needs to see his family, that needs to go out and represent. When you have a block leader on every single block, they can own the block as their own. That's something I learned from Jim Brown from A Mayor I Can. We need to put curriculums from people who really came from the streets, not people who are just trying to set us up to go into a work system or prison system that applies to what people are really going through, which Jim Brown has created.
What about gun violence with all the debate about the Second Amendment going on?
The problem is illegal guns. Illegal guns is the problem, not legal guns. We have the right to bear arms.
President Trump has said that he favors stop and frisk. Are you guys going to be discussing that? Do you think you can change his mind?
Yeah, we're gonna discuss. I didn't mean to put you on blast like that, bro. But it's definitely.
I'm open-minded. I'm here.
Yeah.
Come back.
Mr. President, would you like him to speak up?
Come back. Oh, I didn't mean to put you on blast, bro. Do you realize that just 2 days ago he gave a damn speech in Chicago touting stop and frisk, saying it should be national policy? And now, oh, I'm open. No, he's not. You're getting played, Kanye. Oh, by the way, great rant about education. And you know, you're absolutely right. We should have music back in schools and arts back in school. Here we go to my iPad. A Trump administration 2019 budget proposing a decrease of $3.7 billion in the Department of Education. Looks like Donald Trump ain't really down with you. But also, Kanye, while you also having your conversation, talk about how the Trump administration is allowing for-profit universities back into the door and basically stealing money from students. It's amazing what happens when you do not read or watch this show. Press play.
One of your rallies.
He can speak for me anytime he wants. He's been a great guy. He's a smart cookie. Smart. He gets it. These two guys, Jim Brown, he's been doing this for a long time.
Is this a future presidential candidate?
Could very well be.
Only after.
Could very well be. That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
We have a good, and the thing is, let's stop worrying about the future. All we really have is today. We just have today, over and over and over again, the eternal return, the hero's journey. And Trump is on his hero's journey right now. And he might not have expected to have a crazy motherfucker like Kanye West run up and support. But best believe, we are going to make America great. Now, the thing is, another thing is black people have an issue with the word again. And I believe my feeling from that is because I'm going to go all the way signaling with it, because time is a myth. All we have is now, all we have is today. So the word again, it doesn't hurt us because of the idea of racism and slavery and different things. It hurts us because we need to focus on who we are now, today. I believe. So I actually brought some hats in that have a bit of a transition. I'm not trying to put you up there on the spot a little bit. I made a hat that says Make America Great. Just that. But I would love to see, at the Super Bowl, Trump wearing the Make America Great hat, Colin wearing the Make America Great, and showing that we can bend a bit on this side, we can bend a bit on this side, and we can learn how to be malleable in the infinite universe that we are and the loving beings that we are, that we don't have to stick to all traditions. And we aren't a side. We are one unit. We are one country. We are one moment in history and time. We might have been here before, but right now, we're here together, and the greatest value that people have are other people. And we need to stop working on red and blue. It's like a gang again.
You're in the Oval Office.
Okay.
How does it feel to be in the Oval Office?
Oh, it is good energy in this.
Isn't it good energy?
It's good energy.
It's a great place. Jim, how do you feel?
I feel good. I truly feel good. I thank you, too.
You're so respected. And what Kanye's doing has been incredible. All over the world they're talking about this. And I have to tell you, I had important meetings today with senators and with everything. Nobody cared. They wanted this meeting. This is the meeting. Is that right? I can say that to John. No, the others were good, right? But this is what they want.
Maybe only you would be here.
Well, it's my honor, Jim. I want to tell you, I've been a fan of yours for a long time. Long time. And nobody like you. Nobody like you. No athlete like you.
Well, you know why I'm here? I'm here to serve.
Yeah, it's really nice.
I'm not here to ask for anything. I'm here to contribute.
You know, that's always been the way Jim has been for a long time. And he
Come
just
back.
wanted to help. And
I'm here to serve. I'm here to contribute. I'm not here to ask for anything. How in the hell can you sit next to somebody who just talked about mental health, who talked about high incarceration, who talked about violence, who talked about the need for all of these things in our schools? Every single thing Kanye West said, the person sitting across from him stands against. And then the one time in the meeting where Kanye actually was challenging something he said, he apologized. Oh, I didn't mean to put you on blast, boss. That's actually what he did. Now, if you're going to sit before the President of the United States, Jim Brown, and Kanye West, and again, I got no problem with you wearing a Make America Great Again hat. 94% black women voted for Hillary Clinton, which means 6% of black women vote for Donald Trump. Okay? 82% of black men voted for Hillary Clinton, which means the other dudes voted for Donald Trump. So, and it also be clear, We know black conservatives, all right? It ain't like we have never met a black Republican or a black conservative. But I simply have one requirement. And if you sit before the President of the United States and in the Oval Office, at least go in there with a set of facts and don't go in there looking like and sound like a fool, just saying we need this. I love this man. I'm going to give him a hug when he stands in opposition to everything you just talked about. You can't sit here and go to the Oval Office and call for the release of Larry Hoover, serving 6 life sentences, when the very man you're sitting across won't even release a brother who was arrested in jail for a small amount of marijuana. Press play.
It's something special. Jennifer, did you have a question?
I guess just what do you feel about stop and frisk? Are you gonna?
Well, we're going to look at it. I'm open to everything. Hey, look, I think it's a shame what's happening in Chicago.
What else can be done?
I'm in Chicago a lot, too. I have nice things in Chicago. You know that, right? And I hate to see what's happening. They're having the numbers of people being shot and killed, and it's not for this country. So they have to do something, and I am totally open. If we can do it a different way, Kanye, I'm totally open. But they have to do, I mean, we all agree they have to do something, that's for sure.
Is it a law enforcement issue, a legislation?
Well, maybe it's a combination of both. Yeah, I guess it is, but I think it's probably a combination of both. And it's also a respect issue. They respect this guy, they respect this guy. That's a big thing. Right now, they're not respecting, let's say, your mayor or let's say your leadership in Chicago, but certainly it shouldn't be happening. What's going on there should not be happening. Steve, go ahead. Honestly, from our standpoint, this was just set up to be a lunch of 2 people that I like, and I guess they like me. And we're going to have lunch, we're going to talk.
You said, I guess you know I love you.
I know you do. But I don't want to put you in that spot. But
I'm standing in that spot. I love this guy right here. Let me give this guy a hug right here. I love this guy right here.
Yeah. That's really nice. And that's from the heart. I didn't want to put you in that position.
I love this guy right here. Let me say it again. I got no problem if a person says, I want to support Donald Trump. What my problem is when you lay out a litany of issues and the guy sitting across from you stands in complete opposition in policy, in who he appoints, in his agenda, and when he sits there and says they've got to do something about it. I thought when you campaigned in your speech in Cleveland, you said only one person can fix this. And you mentioned Chicago. Oh, I was in the arena when you did. We now are in September. No, we're in October 2018. You got in January 2017, and you actually have no plan. Do you know why Kanye has no plan? Because when I asked him about it, he said, my plan is strength. Then he said it's respect. Who should respect? Should gang members in Chicago be respecting the cops? Okay. But you just had Larry Hoover's attorney sitting right across from you in the Oval Office, who was the leader of one of the most violent gangs in Chicago. I'm just trying to understand, which is it? A lot of y'all out there probably will say, Roland, why'd you waste your time on Kanye? I didn't waste my time on Kanye. This whole discussion right here has been about Trump. See, Trump wanted that. See, Trump wanted the cable networks to show you the circus. What he also knew is that these other journalists were not going to dissect what was said. They were going to focus on, again, the shiny object. I wanted all of you to understand everything Kanye said and then get the facts of what he said and then show you the juxtaposition of him sitting there saying, I love this guy in his hat, yet the guy he loves has policies that are in complete opposition to everything he said in the meeting. Last point, Kanye West said that we as black people should only be concerned about today. We should not be concerned about what happened before. See, here's the problem, Kanye. You can live anywhere you want to, But redlining actually still impacts black people today. So what happened yesterday impacts today. We do know that all these laws, you sat there and just railed about the 13th Amendment and how, it's oppressing us and we need prisoner reparations. Yet we do know that there are laws right now that are denying people of color, especially black people, the right to vote because they served time in prison, and laws dating back to the 1800s and the early 1900s, which means, Kanye, that things that were passed then impact us today. When we begin to talk about any number of other things, we can still talk about education. You still have people who are still fighting Brown versus Board of Education, which came in 1954. Brown 2 came in 1955. And here we are in 2018. But you somehow say we should not be concerned about what happened yesterday. We should only be concerned about today. Kanye, you can't sit in the Oval Office and talk about the 13th Amendment, which was ratified in 1865, and then say we should not be concerned about yesterday and only be concerned about today. If that's the case, then we shouldn't be concerned about the 13th Amendment. Why? Because it was ratified in 1865. You don't even understand what you're saying. You're even contradicting yourself.